I remember once we were just warming up, and this lad beside me had dreadlocks, and I didn't know who he was because I was just a kid, and I just landed over in this country. I didn't know any of the players really. I knew Ronald Koeman, he was there,
Wow.
but this fella had dreadlocks beside me, and I was like, "Why aren't you involved?" He's like, "Oh, they want me to go. They don't want me here anymore." Where are you going? Well, I don't know. Maybe Celtic. Anyway, that turned out to be Henrik Larsson.
You are listening to House of Football, brought to you by SportsJOE and William Hill.
Hello, I'm Eric Lawler. Welcome to House of Football with SportsJOE and William Hill. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined in studio once again by Sligo's finest, the man, the myth, the legend. That is Mr. Alan Cawley. And also later in the show, we'll be joined by former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly. I cannot wait. Al, you're back. How are you?
Eric, good to see you.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be back as well. Yeah, I'm comfy in this chair.
Yeah, it is. It suits you. It really does.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah,
I think the background it brings out your cheekbones.
Does
or
it?
something.
Yeah,
it really
well,
does.
I got good feedback on the videos last week, I have to say.
Yeah.
Saying, we didn't realise you were as
handsome.
Well,
yeah.
I let you say that.
No filter use or nothing. Like, you know what I mean?
Filters are mad things.
Yeah.
Filters nowadays and all. And
you just can't believe anything you see online anymore. But Al, come here. I want to talk to you about this being probably one of your favourite times of the year because a certain sporting event has begun in Sheffield.
Yeah, not many people. Well, maybe people might know, but snooker was my first love, Eric. Yeah.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, snooker was my first love.
Did you have a misspent youth?
Yeah.
Hanging around snooker halls?
Yeah.
Really?
And the reason being because my dad used to run the snooker hall.
Ah, stop.
Yeah. So we used to have two tables in a place called the CYMS, the Catholic Young Men's Society, which was down the bottom of the town hall in Sligo town. And he was always brought up around the snooker pool scene, which was obviously very popular back in his day when he was kind of growing up. And the older he got then, he was trying to just give back a little bit, I suppose, and a place to get young lads in off the street.
Mm-hmm. And that was the golden era of snooker as well. Like,
Absolutely.
The 70s, 80s. It was like, we all remember that 1985 final. Well, those of us old enough to remember it. Were the 1985 final, Dennis Taylor, and the match finished at like 2:30 in the morning or whatever. But anyway, who's going to win this year's World Snooker Championship?
Mark Allen, I've tipped. I've been over
from Belfast.
I've been over 4 or 5 times, Eric. If you ever get the chance,
the Crucible.
Yeah, and obviously football is me number one. But in terms of something that I love, as I said, I've been over to the World Championships. And I often say to people that it's the best sporting event I've been at, and people look at me as if I have 3 heads. It's absolutely amazing, honestly, and it's only one of those things that if you ever get the chance to go to and attend, that you'll probably look back and say, remember that lad that said that it's a great place to be. It's incredible. It's just so intimate, and
the drama.
You can hear a pin drop in a place, small little arena. People think on the television as if there's 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's only a small little theatre. I think it holds 900 people.
Okay.
When you bring down the partition in the middle, it makes it even smaller again.
Yeah. When you have the one table scenario from the semis onwards.
It's just an amazing place.
Now I'm going to bring it back to your second love, football. Because at the end of the day, this is a football podcast. I'll tell you what, we'll try and get an L Snooker podcast going as well. I'll be bringing in for that as well, okay? The House of Snooker, okay? But for now, Al, so the football that was in the weekend that's just passed, a lot of footballs happened, both the League of Ireland and the Premier League. If we just touch off the League of Ireland to start off, we were both at the game in Dalymount Park. Bows the early pace setters in the league against St. Patrick's Athletic. Pats won 3-2. A highly entertaining game. One of my favourite moments, I have to say, in a long time in the League of Ireland is, this little Dublin bus thing that Bows have. And they had the remote control bus to bring out the ball, but the referee wouldn't put the ball in the thing to be brought out. So whoever was controlling the bus deliberately steered it into his ankles and took it out.
I know who was controlling it, because it was right in front of me.
Was that PJ?
No, one of the players.
No way, one of the players?
Akintunde. Yeah.
And that's why Jordan Flores got a red card, I reckon.
There you go. They annoyed him for a minute. One, they drove up to the back heels of Paul McLaughlin, and needless to say, he went on to have a questionable night, shall we say. Not just around the red card. I thought his performance overall, for both teams, and it's obviously a topic of conversation coming off the back of Damien Duff's comments last week, and I would agree wholeheartedly with that, Derek. I just don't think the level of refereeing currently in the league is at the standard that's required, to be honest with you, for elite level football. And I don't want to go too heavy in terms of the criticism, because I've said it many times about it, but I think it's at the point where the relationship is so broken between players and staff and referees that somebody needs to get be a leader on this and come together and try and bring, because we need the referees for the games to go ahead, obviously, at all levels. I don't agree with the stuff where referees are going out at grassroots level or junior football and being attacked and abused. There's no place whatsoever for that. But in terms of us focusing on the professional side of things at League of Ireland level, I do think the standard needs to be better. And if the relationship is broken, which I'm convinced it is, between all parties, somebody has to take the lead on this and try and bring them together for the benefit and for the bigger picture in terms of the league to flourish, because we all know about the ticket sales and the hype and the exposure.
Everything's on the up.
Everything's on the up, and we want to bring the referees with us as well.
So in terms of the league itself, Bows surprise early leaders, let's be honest, beaten by Pats at the end. 10 men, played most of the game with 10 men. Jordan Flores sent off just before half time. But when you look at the league as a whole, everyone's beating everyone, even Rovers. Like you thought, oh, here we go, Rovers are moving through the gears, and then they draw the 2-0 down at home to Shelbourne. They pull it back, of course. But you still have to put Rovers as the favourites. Yeah,
you would, but I think you're right when you say how competitive it is, Eric, and everybody taking points off each other, which for us tuning in, I know you're a big Bows fan, I have to remain a bit neutral, but at the same time I want to see Sligo Rovers do well. But for the good of the league, I think it's great that it's competitive and we have 3, 4, 5 teams maybe in the mix. The longer it can stay like that, I think will be good for us as well, and obviously the amount of people that are tuning in at the moment to see it. But I would still have Rovers as favourites, you're right, because you look at the quality that they have and the quality that they possess, not only on the first 11, you look at off the bench as well, the squad they have, and over the course of a season you would expect them to obviously come out on top.
And just on that Rovers squad, they've got players who've played for Ireland before, the likes of Jack Byrne, the likes of Graham Burke. Do you think they're still good enough for the call-up? And is there any other Rovers players or any other League of Ireland players that you think would be worthy of a call-up to the senior men's team?
I think when you go back to that time when Jack and Graham did get their call-ups and they were fully deserved and rightly so, it was around the time of the major transformation that was going on in amongst the squad with Stephen, and obviously he was trying to try out new players and young players and bring them through. I think if you look, and we're 2 years down the line now from that, and you look at the performance against France, and we look like we've more kind of steadied the ship in terms of Stephen knows his best 8 or 9, 10 out of 11 maybe, and particularly in that midfield area where both Jack and Graham play. I think it's harder for them to get in now because lads have come along and have 15, 20 caps now, whereas before they would have been starting off the likes of Malumbi, Knight, these young lads in midfield, whereas you look at them now, they're more established in that setup and that team. So as I say, I think it's harder for Jack and Graham right now at this moment in time. But if they're producing the goods and they're performing to the level, I have no qualms about putting them in, or Stephen putting them in. I'm sure he would as well. I think though, off the back of maybe the league at the moment, they have been excellent, the boys, particularly Graham Burke over the last probably 3-4 weeks, scoring the goals that he is. Jack has come into a bit of form as well, like the form that we all know that he's capable of. But I think if they were to get back into Stephen's squad, and particularly the competitive games that we're playing in now, I think they have to do something special maybe on the European stage.
Right.
And obviously that's upcoming in a few weeks when that all kicks off. But for them maybe to get themselves back into that squad, I think they have to be doing it at a slightly higher level than maybe in the league at the moment.
Okay, right, so we're going to move back onto the Premier League. The drama that is the Premier League, Al, and obviously the big story over the weekend was, I suppose, Arsenal looked like they're having another wobble, and for the second week in succession went 2-0 up, coasting, and then find themselves dragged back to 2-2, and that's 4 points dropped in 2 matches. It's kind of put the title in both their hands, because if both of them, if either team wins all their games, they're going to be champions. But what's your opinion of Arsenal at the moment?
Pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure, Eric. And it brought me back to that time when I was thought Arteta might come out and say, and I would love it if we beat them, the Kevin Keegan moment. But I just look at the game on Sunday, and as you say, for it to happen 2 weeks on the trot, it can happen in Anfield and Liverpool, and they have the quality obviously amongst the team, even though they've been inconsistent, where you would nearly allow for the fact that, as I say, crazy things can happen and they get themselves back in the game. And at the end, Arsenal were hanging on for a point, and last week we might have been looking back come the end of the season at that, thinking that might be a point gained. Then you go to West Ham, fighting for their lives, down near the bottom, a team that's struggling. I know it's a game away from home, but when you're 2-0 up and cruising
after
in the manner,
10 minutes,
and in the manner in which they were, Eric,
they quietened the crowd and everything. There was boos coming from the West Ham crowd.
For the first 35 minutes, they were so dominant and so comfortable in the game. A slip up then with Partey, obviously tries something on the edge of the box. Rice nicks it off him, plays it in, and the penalty obviously is given. Ben Rama steps up, takes the penalty, and the whole atmosphere and dynamic in the stadium changes.
Yeah, it's like somebody flicked a switch.
And then, as you said, the pressure kind of builds on them, and they're thinking, Here we go again. Obviously, thinking back to Anfield the previous week. And I was really disappointed with them this week because all season I've stuck up for Arsenal in the sense that I think they've been brilliant. They've played great football. They've been great to watch. I had them down as favourites to win the league, even though City are obviously building up ahead of steam. But I was so disappointed with them at the weekend, Eric, because even though West Ham got themselves back into the game, there was still 50 minutes for Arsenal to obviously come back themselves and obviously go again and try and get a winner or get the third goal for themselves. But they were so tepid in that second half. If anything, it looked like West Ham might have gone on to get the winner. And they huffed and puffed for the next kind of 40, 45 minutes. And I was so disappointed with them. And you look at it now and it's absolutely, it's 3 points drop because they were in such a kind of dominant position, and to let it slip in the manner that they did. Then you flick over to City, who, as I say, are building up such a run of form at the moment. And for the first time all season, as I said, I've stuck with Arsenal. For the first time all season, I've flipped, and I think Man City will win the league now.
Oh, because that was my next question. Do you think Arsenal have blown?
Yeah, I think they're gone.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Psychologically, the damage that will do, Eric.
Right.
Now, they still have an opportunity to come back. And one of the reasons I was giving them a big opportunity towards the end was the fact that they will go into all their games fresh, because obviously they're not involved in any other competition. I think that actually might hinder them now in the sense that Man City, who I thought would be going into the Champions League and the FA Cup, and they would be distractions in terms of trying to win a league, because they've such momentum with them now. They're just bouncing from game to game no matter what the competition, and they've hit such a red hot kind of patch of form that I just think it's looking ominous now for everybody else, and particularly for Arsenal. And the way they wilted on Sunday really disappointed me.
Yeah, and it's kind of ominous, I suppose, coming into the business end of the season. Roy Keane said it would be an absolute disaster for Arsenal if they don't win the league, whereas Gary Neville said they still had an excellent season. Where would you say it?
Up to now, you would say they still had an excellent season, but I would kind of still be along the side of Roy in the sense that they've got themselves into such a strong position that it will be a disaster now if they don't get the job done.
Because who knows when they'll be in this chance again, because you look at the teams that they're competing with, they're all going to strengthen in the summer, and Arsenal of course will strengthen as well, but they're going to have Champions League football as well, but next season you'd imagine City will be even stronger again. Is that even possible? Can they get even stronger?
Yeah, they're phenomenal. City are a joke. City are a joke.
They're ridiculous.
They really are. And you look at them, and the game, even if you go back to the Champions League game during the week, Eric, they're playing Bayern Munich. Bayern were actually very good.
Yeah.
I was watching the game thinking, particularly in the second half when Bayern came out, had 3 or 4 pot shots from just outside the box. You're thinking, game on here. I was really enjoying it. And next thing, for that half an hour, City just overpowered them, got the goals. And I'm sure Tuchel was probably going away thinking, we've actually played okay here.
Yeah, he even came out with a comment saying, I fell in love with my team last night because he thought they played really well, showed a lot of character.
I thought they were good, Eric. Yeah. I really did. But as you say, City, just the form that they've hit at the moment, and they're just electric. And obviously everybody looks at Haaland and De Bruyne and all, but you look at the likes of Grealish at the moment as well, and obviously he was coming under a bit of stick last year, the price tag. He looks
since the World Cup,
he looks at
been
home now,
sensational
in that environment. Yeah. And it almost looks to me as if he's found his place. He was always the big fish at Villa, and everything went through him, and he was the star man, and he could kind of take the ball where and when he wanted it and do what he wanted. Kind of everybody was looking towards him to produce the magic. He went into City and he probably went so far down the pecking order that he's gone from the big fish to a little tadpole at City. But all of a sudden he's flourishing now.
A tadpole with great calves.
Yeah. Unbelievable calves. But you look at him at the moment, he's playing great stuff.
Yeah. But as I alluded to out there, Al, you think, like, Is this their chance, Art? Is this season their chance? Will they ever get another chance like this, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, Eric. I really do, because for the points you raise in terms of the other clubs that will strengthen, absolutely they'll strengthen. And because of the start that Arsenal got off to, as I said, the position that they put themselves in, and they're going out. It's a bit of a whimper at the moment. Now, obviously, they have the opportunity to bounce back, and of course, they're playing Southampton this week. You would expect them to get the job done there, but Southampton are fighting for their lives as well, so they'll need a big reaction. And then, of course, the huge game is going to be City next week. Obviously.
Next Wednesday,
yeah, it's going to be electric. But you'd have to fancy City with the form that they're in at the moment. And to answer your question, I don't think they'll get a better chance, Eric. It's just because of the strength and depth of the other teams, the money that they're capable of spending, the other teams in the off season as well. I don't think they'll get a better chance, and I suppose Roy Keane said it at the weekend, it will be a bit of a disaster if they don't get the job done.
Just on Arsenal, Al, you tweeted out last night a little video, which caused a lot of controversy. Not because you posted it, but the video itself, the content itself was and it was tweeted out by Arsenal Football Club themselves, of a little mascot getting a jersey signed by the players as they entered the dressing room about 2 hours before kick-off or whatever. And I suppose the message from a lot of fans, was, including yourself, was, wow, not one of them seemed to make an effort to make eye contact or have a little chat with her. You could see her eyes lighten up when Odegaard came along. What was that all about?
It was pathetic, to be honest with you, Eric. I was disappointed with Arsenal already coming off the back of that result on the Sunday. But I'm sitting at home watching a bit of the snooker, getting ready for Leeds and Liverpool. The protester gets on the table in the snooker. I'm already fuming. Then I see this video, Eric, and I was disgusted.
Right.
Because we've all been there in terms of whether you're a little kid growing up as a fan, whether you become an adult as a fan, live your life through kind of supporting a club, whether you're a little kid wants to be a professional football player, if you're lucky enough to go on and be a professional football player. So all the different kind of scenarios we've all kind of seen and maybe been in throughout the different years ourselves. And I know as a young fella being a fan that if you see one of your heroes in front of you, all you want is a smile or a little high five or some sort of an acknowledgement. Yeah. We were over in Tottenham there earlier in the season, and I brought my little lad over, and he loves Harry Kane. And Man City were out warming up along the sideline, right? And he was roaring out to the players, and they were just running up and down. And the big centre half for Man City, Diaz, looked over at one stage and just looked out at him and winked.
No way.
And Harry still thinks to this day he was winking at him. Now, he did wink at him, but he thinks he actually went...
Harry is your son, not Harry Kane.
My son, sorry. And sorry, my son Harry. And just a little moment like that, something similar happened with Calvin Phillips, and they acknowledged somebody in the crowd. And straight away the young lad feels, look, he looked at me.
And it costs nothing.
And these players were standing in front of this little girl, for anybody that hasn't seen the video, and her face, particularly with Martin Odegaard, who I'm a massive fan, a brilliant player. And I'm not suggesting the Arsenal players are bad people, because we obviously don't know them. I've seen a couple of the documentary. Saka looks like a great lad, young Saka. I'm a big fan of his as well. But in this particular moment, the young girl is standing with her dad. They're signing the jersey, and not one of them looked at her. And Odegaard, you can see her face light up. Obviously,
and she looks at her dad as if to say, he's my favourite player.
And all he has to do is say hello to the little kid.
And it would have made her day.
Give her a high five. How you doing? How's things? Great to see you. Whatever. And I think back to, obviously, we'll be chatting to David Connolly later in the programme, and I often think of Seamus Coleman, who I know, and I've seen different things with Seamus, and I nearly even think it's an Irish thing with us, that maybe the way we're brought up, Eric, that just comes naturally to us. A little hello straight away.
I'm happy to chat to every granny that stops me in the supermarket and talk about Fair City.
You know
all
what I mean?
the time.
Well,
I've loads of time for the grannies.
And the natural inclination for us is to go and do that. And this video, as I said, I was disgusted by it. And it came from Arsenal's own account. Whoever came up with the brainwave to put this out, because it's backfired massively. And it was just a moment where I thought, no, I'm not having this.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's Arsenal. That's Arsenal pigeonholed and sent off for the rest of the season.
And I hope they don't win the league after this, Eric.
You've lost the dressing room, Arsenal. You've lost the dressing room. Come here. Moving on to another London club, Chelsea, who've had a crazy season. And I know last time you were in with us, Al, we touched upon the fact, and you thought it was a bizarre decision to reappoint Frank Lampard. And it's looking like that already. Like, he's 3 games, 3 defeats. Watched them against Brighton at the weekend. They were lucky it was only 2-1. It could have been 6 or 7 and you wouldn't have blinked an eye because Brighton were that good. But Chelsea looked listless, looked like they had no plan. And, you know, like in his last 17 games as a manager, when you go back to his Everton tenure, he's won 1 game. So, like, what are Chelsea at?
It's a good question, Eric. What are Chelsea at? Because we mentioned it here last week in terms of how bizarre that appointment was, based on everything that has gone before, in terms of the failure already when he was at Chelsea. Then he failed at Everton as well. And for them to appoint him in a situation where they're absolutely struggling, and you bring in somebody with the novice experience that he has as a manager. He's only had those. Obviously, he was with Derby beforehand for a short spell, and then he's had the 2 stints with Chelsea and Everton. But in terms of his managerial experience and career, if you want somebody to come in like a Roy Hodgson, who steadied the ship at Crystal Palace and looks like done a brilliant appointment since he's come back in, but he's built up a portfolio of experience over the years, Eric, whereas Lampard hasn't got that, and he's come in and nothing's changed. I watched them against Real Madrid last week. Now, we all know Real Madrid are brilliant, but Real Madrid were in second gear in the second half.
Coasting.
And as you say, coasting, listless is a great description for Chelsea, because in terms of their identity and their plan and structure on them, there's nothing. And for Brighton, and I know Brighton are having a good season, but 9 times out of 10 you'd expect Chelsea, if they're in their pomp, to be beating a Brighton team.
Yeah.
And for the appointment to be made, and then I'm reading this week, Bowley went in after and had a go at them as well. And it's just a mess. It's an absolute mess from the top down. And obviously Lampard has been kind of given that responsibility as the manager. But as you said there, it already looks like a disaster.
What is the biggest issue there, Al, in your opinion? Is it the players? Is it the coach? Is it the owner?
Well, I wouldn't have got rid of Potter.
Yeah.
So, like, if you bring a manager in to do a job, and I know things were going pretty bad, but if you have a plan in your head, you stick to that plan. In my view, unless it becomes totally kind of untenable. But I never felt it was at that stage yet, where sometimes you have to go through. As Andy Dufresne, you have to crawl through a mile of shit to come out clean at the end, Eric. You know, and sometimes,
I like it, Al.
Sometimes you have to do that,
yeah.
and if that means like we have to go through the tough times and the troubled times, and it's really difficult, but we can see a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what we're trying to do and achieve here. I think had they stuck with Potter, they might have a better chance of coming out and seeing that.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment with Lampard, it's just, where is it going?
It's just blown up.
Darkness. Like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel right now, and it's probably wrong to pin it all on him right now, because he's inherited a squad of players, and this is why I think Potter as well was let down, because there was players brought in, and I'd say if you were to sit down with Graham Potter, I'd say he didn't give the go-ahead on probably 5, 6, 7 of them. And all of a sudden he finds himself in a situation where there's 25 first-team players with big egos. I've already mentioned the spoiled brattiness of Arsenal and what they were doing with the wee mascot. So you have fellas of this ilk, and Potter's trying to manage that toxic environment with fellas, and that's ultimately why it fails, Eric, with these boys.
On the subject of managers, and managers doing a great job and coming in, you look at Emery at Aston Villa and the job he's done there. And, when you think back to the time when he was at Arsenal, obviously it was a bit of a poison chalice. He was coming in after Wenger, who had an amazing Arsenal career. But he was often lampooned when he was there, even though he had a highly impressive CV with Sevilla, winning Europa Leagues and all that kind of stuff, a decorated club career in La Liga, yet lampooned at Arsenal, wasn't really taken seriously. Well, look at the job he's done there at Aston Villa. It's
absolutely phenomenal. I think it's 7 wins in 8, 1 draw. They've won 5 on the bounce. It's just unbelievable. And to watch them at the weekend, the way they're playing as well, the shape and structure he's put on that team, they absolutely ripped Newcastle to shreds. And Newcastle themselves, sitting third in the table, have been brilliant all year. Nobody has dismantled Newcastle the way Villa did at the weekend. Ollie Watkins looks like a new player. The belief that Emery has probably given him as well.
That's the thing, Al, because that squad is inherently the same squad Steven Gerrard had. So Emery hasn't bought anyone. He's come in and he's worked with those players. And as you said, he's made players like Watkins, John McGinn, they look like better players. And is that down to coaching on a day-to-day basis on the training ground?
100%, because that's what a coach's job, a manager's job, is to try and make players better at your disposal, what you have. As you said, he hasn't bought anyone or brought anyone in. The group that he inherited was there previous, that Gerrard made a couple of signings or whatever. And as you say, the proof is in the pudding. He's made those players better with the performances on the pitch as well. A couple of them were disgruntled. I know Mings was having trouble with Gerrard at the time as well around the captaincy. It looks like he's brought them all together, given them belief. Even he looks like he's playing very well at the moment. And what really annoyed me about the Unai Emery kind of stint under the Arsenal regime when he was there, the disrespect that was shown to him as well, because he almost became this kind of...
fun figure.
Yeah, because of his accent and the way he was speaking. He's a Spanish man, like coming over, learning a new language, like to educate himself and try and learn that new language, and obviously come into that environment and want to try and speak in the English way as well. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and everybody started to ridicule him for that, which was a total lack of respect, where he's come in now at Villa again and he's proved just what a brilliant top level coach he is. And I go back to the point about Lampard. Gerrard is the same case. They haven't built up that level of a portfolio like what an Unai Emery has, Roy Hodgson, whoever, all those lads with the experience. And again, the proof is in the pudding with Emery doing an unbelievable job.
It's gas. You mentioned Roy Hodgson there. I think a lot of eyebrows were raised when he came back to Palace after Vieira was sacked, and I thought Vieira was doing a decent job there for a while. But I suppose what Hodgson has done is he's come in And I think before the last 4 or 5 matches of Vieira's reign, I think they had a combined total of like 3 or 4 shots on goal.
I don't think they scored a goal, yeah.
Yeah, and in his first match, they had 31 shots on goal. Yeah. So what happens there when Hodgson comes in? Obviously, another man who has a glittering portfolio, vast experience, and is managed all over Europe and national team level with England as well. But he's come in and he's given these players like Olise and Eze belief. And like in the 3 games that he's been in charge, Crystal Palace are playing like primetime Barcelona. It's incredible.
It actually is incredible. But it just goes to show what can be done as well, Eric. And sometimes, like, it's very simple. People now are trying to reinvent wheels when they talk about football and stuff, but man management is so important. And if he comes in, Roy Hodgson, looks like he might put his arm around like the likes of Olise, the likes of Eze, who I was always a massive fan of, and I tweeted out at the weekend which one of the big boys are going to take him, because he's that good, or he could go and play with one of the big boys. He's absolutely fantastic. I thought he actually might have had a bit of a sniff of going to the World Cup with England as well, because he was playing so well. But since Hodgson has come in, he looks even better again. And sometimes it can be just as simple as that, or giving fellas belief, making them feel 10 foot tall. He was always known as a coach who was, in terms of his team's shape and a structure, that they might be a bit negative and defensive. But as you said, it looks as though he's come in and thought, well, look, this is my last shot at this. Go out and play, lads, and enjoy yourselves and express yourselves. Yeah. And they have players as well that fits that system. Like if he was trying to come in and put restrictions on an Eze or Olise, they'd fall flat on their face, because you can't restrict those type of players to be defensive, because that's not their game. Whereas he might have looked at, again, players at his disposal. You can only work off the personnel that you have in terms of how you want them to play. And he probably looked at what was there in terms of the talent that he has to perform in an attacking way, in an attacking manner. Zaha as well, you throw into the mix, who's been brilliant for Crystal Palace, injured at the moment. And he might have looked at it and thought, with the players I have here, I can't put any limitations on these. Go out, boys, do what you do best, enjoy yourselves, perform, and look at the performances.
And they do look like they're enjoying themselves.
Absolutely
yeah.
And Paddy McCarthy, who's obviously there as well. I know Paddy would have played with him an underage, and obviously Paddy's gone through obviously his playing career, and now he's focusing on his coaching career. And what a brilliant man to be learning off with Roy Hodgson as well, for him, in terms of being an understudy there, to obviously want to go on and be a coach in his own right one day. Brilliant to be learning off the likes of Roy Hodgson.
And amazing. Sorry, but just go back to the Villa thing again. Just Ollie Watkins to Man United.
He looks at, I take him right now at this moment in time. Weghorst, I've no time for Martial. I hope he's gone out the door as well, because again, you're talking about surly, sulky boys. Like Martial would drive you up. The fellas would die to play for Man United. Yeah. And you look at the scowl on his face every time he's playing a match, or drive you up the wall. So if he keeps up the form that he's playing with at the moment, Ollie Watkins, because again, as I said, I looked at him at the weekend, looks like a different player.
He's the top scorer in the Premier League since the World Cup, which is incredible. I think he's a goal or two ahead of Rashford. Now I don't know, Rashford has an injury at the moment, but Ten Hag seems to like these physical strikers, and that's what Watkins brings you. But he has a lot of mobility as well. He's a clever player, good movement in the box, and God, he knows how to finish. So anyway, I would echo that. I think Ollie Watkins would be a decent alternative to Harry Kane, who would probably cost 500 million anyway if Daniel Levy has his way.
If you get Kane, go for Kane.
yeah, exactly. Well, come here, listen. The other big football news story of the week was the Euro 2028 UK and Ireland application. All right, like there was a lot of people saying, we've got 2 venues, the Aviva and the Caseman Park in Belfast, which has been redeveloped at the moment. Do you think the bid itself, it's worth it for Irish football? Would a resource be better being put into the League of Ireland than doing up the infrastructure, the grounds and all that? Or where do you stand on the whole 2028 bid? Yeah,
I think there's 2 ways of looking at it, Eric, to be fair. And I would edge a little bit towards what you're saying in terms of the investment. Could it be spent better elsewhere in terms of, obviously, our elite level football? Because you look around the infrastructure and we all know, like, we're miles behind in terms of where it should be, and we've all kind of banged the drum about this over the years. And for the first time in years and years, there feels like there's something happening in the League of Ireland that we're all kind of getting involved, rowing in behind. Stuff that we've said for years ago, but now there seems to be a lot more of a clamour for it from outside the league as well, not just people within the league, which is great to see. So, of course, we all need investment and resources put into that to try and better the facilities. And you mentioned we were in Dalymount Friday night. I can't wait till that's redeveloped, and it'll be phenomenal when it's redeveloped.
8,000 seater.
And Sligo over something similar, big plans. And that's exactly what's needed. But I can still see the argument for hosting a major tournament. And if that was the case, and whether it's Casement Park being redeveloped or whether it's the Aviva, if we were to host 2 or 3 matches here, it would be phenomenal. Like,
I suppose it would be, really, wouldn't it? Yeah, it'd be a real buzz.
Yeah, of course it'd be a real buzz. And we love the football. Yeah. We're mad about it. We want to see the best players play. In terms of the economy as well, what it would bring in, visitors coming over to the country, visiting the place as well, the revenue it would generate. So I can see that being a positive as well. And it's probably not a bad thing for the FEI to be involved in these type of conversations and arguments with other kind of powers that be around the world, around Europe as well, that we're in the conversation. You don't want to be left out on the outskirts, you know.
I think people are a bit concerned. I think in that 2028, if I read somewhere that they're reducing it to 24 teams, and you're kind of going, well, then do Ireland qualify automatically as a host, or what's going on? Like, you know, because it'll be like England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and Ireland. You can't have 5 teams who automatically qualify and only 19 places up for 800 teams. Like, you know what I mean? It's the top one in that group, and then the other 6 go home. You know, like, it's impossible. But anyway, listen, I'd be coming from where you're coming from, Al. I'm a bit of both. I would like to see a little bit more investment, obviously, in the local game, because I think that's what will breed our international team going forward. But also, wouldn't it be just amazing to rock up to the Aviva one night and watch France playing Spain or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine
it would
that
be
buzz,
unbelievable.
like, you know.
Think about it, you know, and even around the streets of Dublin, all the fans and all, it would be that carnival atmosphere. It would be unreal. Now, in saying that, I think there's more of an understanding, though, from people in government and politicians in terms of the investment that's needed. Because I see people now, the sports minister for one, the previous sports minister now, whether it's PR, I don't know, but they're all getting involved in terms of conversations around the league and investment. And I see a lot more of that on social media now than I've ever seen. So I think there's a bit more of a clearer understanding of people in those positions that, look, the responsibility is on us now to try and develop the players and bring them through. And one thing that we need massively to develop them is proper infrastructure and facilities.
Brilliant. Al, I could talk to you all day, as you know.
I do enjoy it.
But we have to go over and talk to Mr. David Connolly. So, without further ado, we're going to go now live over to David Connolly to have a chat. Okay, it gives me immense pleasure to bring our next guest on to House of Football podcast. It is the legendary Irish striker, former Irish striker David Connolly, who's played 41 times for Ireland, scoring 9 goals, and a man who's had a lot of clubs, nearly as much clubs as you've had, Al, in your time. He played for Watford, Feyenoord, Wolves on loan, Excelsior on loan, Wimbledon, West Ham, Leicester City, Wigan Athletic, Sunderland, Southampton, Portsmouth, Oxford on loan, and AFC Wimbledon. David Connolly, you're very welcome to House of Football. How are you doing, pal?
Yeah, I'm very well, Eric. We probably haven't got much time left now. You will.
Yeah. Spend 10 minutes naming the clubs you played for. Yeah. Obviously, Dave, we knew you were coming on the show, so we did a little bit of research on you, and obviously, like you're a London lad, but you grew up in a very Irish household. Your parents were Irish. And they moved to London. So you grew up with the in a very Irish household, Gaelic football, hurling. You were very, very familiar with all that. I think did your dad play minor level or something like that? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of when where I grew up in London was kind of beside. Yeah, they used to call. I grew up in Willesden, beside Kilburn, and Kilburn they used to say was County Kilburn.
Yes,
the next county outside. So, I mean, I had a very, I had a great sort of childhood, really, because everyone kind of, all those that emigrated all hung out together. You know, my parents had loads of friends over here, you know, and they built up a kind of community, and basically, all, to be honest, it all revolved around Gaelic games. Yeah. So my dad was a big hurler, more so than Gaelic, the football, but he was a massive hurler. So, and he had 4 brothers, and, so my childhood was kind of based around not football pitches, but it was based around the Gaelic grounds of London.
Right.
So that was me, really. So but to be honest, a lot of the kids my age, they'd look at the dads tearing into each other and kicking 7 bells out of each other in hospital, and we're going, geez, that's not for us. We'll play football. So that's what we do.
A more gentle game, yes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, you're just thinking, why are they doing this? Every week there's another punch-up. It was quite and they didn't wear helmets in those days.
No,
So
real men, David, real men.
I would say every weekend my dad was sort of the captain or then the manager, and they'd have to go to the hospital. So I reckon I'd know near enough every A&E in London, to be honest.
Not much has changed in the GAA world either.
Except they're wearing helmets now. That's the only difference.
Except they're wearing helmets. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
David, so obviously then you being called up for the Republic of Ireland squad must have been a massive honour to you and your family.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've told this story before, but when I was growing up, everyone's heroes would be different. I was a Liverpool fan because of all the Irish lads, and I sort of wrote one once to Jim Beglin. I was about 10 or 11, and I bumped into Jim, and he knows this story, and we have a laugh about it now. But so I was obviously a big Liverpool fan. I wrote to him. He sent me and my dad, would you believe it, 2 tickets up to Anfield. So when I was 10, 11 years old, went up to Anfield. And so, look, I always wanted to be a football player, and obviously Ireland was, I think I had one holiday that wasn't to Ireland. I think we went to Spain and it wasn't a very good one. So it's right, we'll go back to Ireland. So every sort of everything was leading towards. But I never thought I would. But obviously, I had the chance to, and probably helped at the time because Mick McCarthy was Millwall manager and I was playing for Watford, and we'd play against Millwall in the youth team. Look, we'd play against Arsenal, we'd play Tottenham. It's not like nowadays where half the time the big Premier League teams don't play against, your Watfords of this world. But in those days, you played Arsenal, you played Tottenham, you played West Ham, but you'd also play Millwall. It was a mixed southeast. It was a regional based on geography. Yeah. So, Mick was Millwall manager, and in those days, the first team manager, wasn't big enough not to go and watch the kids play. Mm-hmm. They'd make time to go and watch the kids play, because if you didn't go and watch the kids play, you wouldn't know what was coming through, and also you'd have to use them. Whereas nowadays, they'd have like 25 players and you'd have to jump through 1,000 hoops to get a chance in the first team. But 20, 30 years ago, it was a lot easier. So Mick was a Millwall manager. He watched the youth team game. I remember him there when I was about 16. And I scored a good goal against Ben Thatcher. And I think the conversations 16, 17 sort of started then. And, and then when Mick got the main job for Ireland, I got the call.
Brilliant. Just going back to your club career, David, obviously you came to the attention playing with Watford, and then you made the big leap to Dutch football, signing for the Dutch giants Feyenoord. Can you tell us a little bit how about that move came about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you how that move came about, because we played a few games for Ireland in that year because we didn't qualify for Euro 96. So we had the US Cup, which was brilliant because, the lads as a youngster going over to New York and Boston and as a kid. And then we had a whole team making their debuts, Shea, I think, made his debut, and Kev Kilban and
Ian Hart, I think, as well.
Yeah. There was loads of them. Yeah, because I saw the last one with Harty. Yeah. And I mean, so you had a raft of youngsters. I think Harty was a little bit, maybe a couple of years after us because he's a bit younger. Right. But there was a raft of us that got a chance in and around that US Cup. And then after that, I think we played Holland in a friendly at Feyenoord Stadium before Euro 96. And I played quite well against them. Yeah. Probably had a one-off, and...
you're very modest, Dave, very modest.
Well, and, one good game, and so that's where the conversation started, I guess. And it led to the move on a free transfer. And look, at the time, you get to play Champions League football. I didn't think I'd play Champions League football. I didn't play Champions League football again. But I mean, what a club. For those that don't know it, I mean, my God. You would not.
Yeah,
incredible club.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the stadium itself, David. In that it was such like what's it, the Kuip arena? Yeah, and it's such a cathedral of football. The fans are so passionate there, and Feyenoord now are top of the Dutch league at the moment. They're playing really well, and
even watching the Europa League stuff there last week and all, the atmosphere is absolutely incredible. So it must have been some experience, Dave, obviously, to be playing your weekly football in that arena.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there'd be like people would come and have their lunch and watch you train, or the first day, there'd be first day training. They'd have to build mini stands. There'd be
Wow.
about 5,000 fans watching training, and they'd have their own newspaper.
Yeah.
And they'd be putting out in the newspaper, if you missed a sitter in training, you're like, geez, you can't even have a bad day training. And there'd be loads of fans. I mean, it was like nothing else you'd ever experienced, and I was nowhere near ready for it. But I think by the time I left, I understood what it was to be, competing at that level. And the next season, they won the UEFA Cup. I mean, they were a good team. They were a good team.
There were some seasoned internationals at your time, David. I think when you joined, it was just as Mr. Larsson was leaving. Is that right? Henrik Larsson was leaving to sign for Celtic.
I mean, that was amazing, because I remember once we were just warming up, and this lad beside me had dreadlocks, and I didn't know who he was, because I was just a kid and I just landed over in this country. I didn't know any of the players really. I knew Ronald Koeman, he was there.
Wow.
But this fella had dreadlocks beside me, and I was like, "Why aren't you involved?" He's like, they want me to go. They don't want me here anymore. And we're just jogging along, You think, oh, okay. Where are you going? Well, I don't know. Maybe Celtic. There was a few. Anyway, that turned out to be Henrik Larsson. So they really screwed that up.
Yeah.
They got rid of him. and they got me in. So that was fun.
And he went for the bargain. 650,000, I think, was the fee that Celtic paid.
Peanuts.
Yeah, absolutely. When you consider what,
can you imagine
what he did in his time there. What was I going to say? But there was also some other big personalities there, David. Was it Giovanni van Bronckhorst was there as well when you were there?
Yeah. Some good. Giovanni and plenty of Dudek.
Oh, Jersey Dudek, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I heard. I read a great story, David, where Feyenoord hadn't beaten Ajax in like 26 years away from home, and you scored twice in a 4-3 win, and you were carried off the pitch shoulder high by Jersey Dudek.
Well, most of that story is true, but with most stories, there's a little bit of
Why let the truth get in the way of a good story?
Yeah. Exactly. He didn't. I don't think he put me on his shoulders. The other goalkeeper, the reserve goalkeeper, did. But let's just keep it.
Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah. How did you find, Dave? I suppose the transformation coming from the rough and tumble of English football, which it would have been very much so back then. Obviously nowadays everybody's trying to play it the correct way, but all we ever heard of growing up was the Dutch football and the Dutch way, whereas obviously you were going into that environment. So the transformation from going to Watford or wherever it was, as you said, as a young player coming through, to go over to the culture in the Netherlands at the time, and obviously the Dutch way, as we hear the phrase. How did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some lads now, every week I look online, I see there's another young Irish lad going to Italy or going somewhere, but in those days it didn't really happen. I mean, I have to say, times have changed, right? When we were at Watford, we'd train a couple of times a week. Nowadays, obviously, if you're 14, 15, 16, you'll be training 4 times a week, probably. I went over there, I couldn't do a step over. Right. It wasn't my game. I went over there and the right backs could do a step over, and you're like, geez, what? I could maybe score a goal, but what it led me to obviously see is that what I'd been doing in my formative years, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't swap it, and I really enjoyed it. But if we trained twice a week, one of those days we'd end up, to be honest, running round Watford's Greyhound track.
Wow.
So,
and did you have to get into the traps as well at the start?
Exactly. Yeah.
Chase the hare.
Chase the hare. A few times you might be the hare, but and I remember once I had like a McDonald's or something before training. I was about 15, and then I saw it an hour later on the track, because you were just vomiting. So I guess. Look, in all seriousness, when you're coming through, right, you have that you build up. You got that golden age of learning, and in those days, if you weren't out kicking the ball in the streets, maybe all day, every day, but you relied on your football for training for your skills as well as everything else. You probably think the Dutch were doing a lot more technical stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess in the middle there's the happy medium, which I think everyone does now. Everyone's got that happy medium of the right sort of training with and I think everyone's at a pretty similar level training wise, and then it's just your ability as a player. But in those days we train twice a week. One of them we'd do running, and then the other time was your football work.
Yeah. David, I'm going to bring you back to your Ireland career. You obviously played in the World Cup in 2002, and Mick McCarthy was the manager of that team. What, in your opinion, David, made Mick McCarthy such a good manager, particularly of that Ireland team?
Well, I mean, I got on very well with Mick, but Mick was very. I mean, he was honest as the day is long. I remember once he came to stay. He came to Holland, right, to watch me play a game. And he said, I'm over and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, spoke to him after the game. And he was like, where are you going now? And it was about 10:30 at night. And I was like, I'm going home. And he was like, well, can I come? And I was like, so like, in the end.
That's a bit awkward for you, David. What could you say?
What could you say? And I was like, yeah, all right, okay. I mean, geez. So anyway, I'm driving the car and Mick's in the back or whatever. And anyway, I get back to the house and I was with my wife or whatever, and I was only 19 or whatever. She was over with me. I was like, geez, Mick's here. Where the hell are we going to put him? And I was like, well, there's only one spare room, which was at the very top floor, right? But on the very top floor, we just shut the door. It had a wasp nest. Right, so we didn't, no one ever went in there, and I was like, we can't stay there. There's a wasp nest. And I sent her up to Hoover, and I was like, please God, if you get stung in the middle of the night, we're in big trouble. Anyway, it was just funny because I guess what I'm alluding to is that Mick was kind of like a pretty down to earth guy. Like right. he would have rather stayed and had a chat and be nice and relaxed. Someone, one of his players' houses than. I'm sure whether he felt like that in the morning, I don't know, but then he did. But look, I got on well with Mick, and in fact, actually, he sat in the chair. Right, I had this chair in front of the telly. In those days, they had like Canal Plus, which is like Sky or whatever. But after about 11 o'clock, it gets a bit racy,
Okay, yeah.
It gets a bit.
The Red Triangle Channel 4 job.
Yeah.
Nice.
He puts on the TV. And so you work it like this, and and this is gospel truth, right? All this is gospel. He starts flicking, and he comes to one of these Canal Plus stations that after 11 is adults only. And he's like, bloody hell, Dave. And I was like, oh my, this is just a disaster. So, anyways,
it's like watching TV with your dad.
Exactly. So, and I guess that was kind of, Al's a bit, he's right there. At times, he felt like for a lot of us youngsters, he might be like a father figure. He looked after you well. He treated you fairly. If you didn't play well, you understood. He was honest, told you why you didn't play or whatever. But he kept a very honest, happy camp, Yeah. And took a lot of training, joined in. You'd kick him and he'd kick you, and you'd have words. But you knew that ultimately he was a really good, honest guy, and he was trusted him.
That World Cup squad in 2002. Now, come here, listen, we all know what happened in Saipan, but the World Cup itself, David, that was one of the best Irish squads we've ever had. But was there anyone there in that squad that you thought was maybe criminally underrated? Is there somebody maybe who didn't get much of a look in that you thought could have maybe played a more pivotal role, or was it just the way it was?
I don't know, like who do you think?
I don't know. The producers just asked me to ask you that. I have no idea. I can't remember.
Let me think. It's difficult to say because I think going into that, right, as you say, we probably had. Duffer and Robbie were brilliant up top.
Yeah.
If you needed something else, obviously I came on against Spain for a little bit, but you had Quinny as a more aerial threat who could do a bit of everything. We had world-class players all over the back, probably too many at the back to fit everyone in, you know. Midfield were brilliant, even obviously we lost Roy, but even without Roy, Matty Holland or Mark Kinso, whoever was superb. It's hard to say who wasn't used, although I would say that it was a great bunch of lads.
Yeah.
There were a really, really great bunch of lads, and
there's a really good sense of togetherness with that group, David. A real group.
Yeah. And to be honest, look, make no mistake. Look at the penalties. Mine was dreadful, and you still think about it. They were all dreadful penalties. The ones, even the winning one for them.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Shea's legs, and it was just one of those where it could have been so different, and it's just it's still ranked.
Was that something, Dave, that obviously helped yourselves and the squad at the time? Because we all know, without repeating history, what happened in terms of Roy and such an influential figure. But the fact that you were a young group, a young talented group, and the togetherness was probably built up already, probably helped salvage things, and why you went on to do so well. Because an incident like that the whole thing could unravel. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, there was. You wouldn't say there was two camps, but there was might have been some of the younger players, or like myself, who would understand and empathise with Roy, and maybe because you weren't coming face to face with Roy every week because you weren't maybe playing at that level, you could empathise a bit with Roy, and then some of the other lads would be more maybe mixed side, thinking there's no way you can talk like that to the manager, and they might be battling Roy every week and kicking lumps out of each other, and so there was like, I wouldn't say two camps, but you could see there'd be some players who could see both sides and some that might be erring one side or the other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think. Look, ultimately it was a disaster for everyone, but it was nearly worked out, and it's a case of what might have been. I mean, it's been gone over so many times, and I actually, for that World Cup, I actually had I kept a video diary.
Wow. Okay.
So I kept the video diary near enough every day for that World Cup with a camcorder, and everywhere we went, like everything. And actually, when a meeting was called, right, I actually had my camcorder in my hand. Like, we were all talking in the room, and there was me, I think Kev Kilban, Shay, and
wow.
I put the camcorder down or whatever. I could have maybe carried it downstairs to the meeting, but I didn't bring it every. Yeah, I brought it most places.
I thought you were about to give us a world exclusive there, David. I've got footage of the Saipan incident.
Can you imagine? And the thing is, we went down to the meeting or whatever, and actually coming over on the plane, I sat next to Roy. It just seemed like I was always beside Roy. When I got on the plane, I sat beside Roy, turned around to everyone, and they were looking at me going, "You're in for a long."
That's a long 12-hour flight.
Yeah, and well, obviously Roy's great company as well. So Roy, great company. You can have could be no better person to spend 12 hours with at times if he's in great form. So that was fine. But anyway, the camcorder kind of stayed in the room. I had the blow up meeting, came back up, flicked the camera on. All the lads are like, no.
Turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off. So I mean, we can laugh about it now, but
it sounds like. Reading between the lines, and from what I've heard, we know what side of the camp you were in, David. And obviously, you seem to, of course, look up to Roy in terms of how good a player he was. But it seemed like he obviously, that was reciprocated, and he had a very good relationship with him because he signed you long after as well.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't in the pipeline at the time, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it was just, I could... look up to him, or you certainly respectful of him as a player in his career, etc., and things like that. But yeah, it worked out that I did sign for Roy.
And famously, David, during his first team talk at Sunderland, you put your hand up in the meeting to correct him on something he said. Brave man to do that, let me tell you. But obviously, you knew him quite well. I think he was talking about their goalkeeper, and you put your hand up and said, "Gaffer, he left the club 3 weeks ago." Was that true?
Yeah, yeah, that was true. I mean, I'm sure he took it in good, in the right way. But the worst thing is, you keep going on, and the lads are thinking, "Geez, what is he on about? The player's not even there anymore." So I was kind of looking after him there a little bit by.
Right. So were the other players aware of it as well, but just they were afraid to say something to him?
Well, I'm not sure. It's just I knew their goalkeeper, so I'd spoken to him in the week.
Yeah.
So that's true. But look, I got on with Roy like I got on with all the lads, but you could easily fall out, kick each other in training or say something, and it could easily go the other way. But
how good was he, David?
Oh yeah, I mean, he was obviously incredible, but he would at times think, are you pulling your weight? Are you playing as well as everyone else? Are we carrying you? You could tell he would have these thoughts. He would have these ways in training, testing you, and you could tell whether he didn't perform that day in training. Sometimes he wouldn't perform in training, but you obviously knew he was, an incredible player. Like, Dennis Irwin was there as well. Two absolute giants of United at the time. So, who were flying. But, Gary Kelly was doing well when Ian Hart at Leeds. There was loads of players obviously performing at the very, very highest level, right? And Shea and Steve Finnan at Liverpool. I mean, geez, but obviously Roy was the Man United captain and massive player. Yeah.
You mentioned defenders kicking lumps out of each other in training, and just looking over your career, David, do you have is there any particular defender out there you found as your most difficult opponent?
If I think of the players in the Ireland team, I would struggle to think of if there's a better defenders than a Stephen Carr or a Richard Dunn or a Gary Kelly or a Steve Finnan. Kenny Cunningham was brilliant. If I think of like defenders, there would not be many better than them. And Shea, even like Shea in goal, right? I played with a lot of goalkeepers, and if you're the striker, you'd want to do some shooting, say before training, end of training, before games, and although famously that did lead to the Roy big kickoff when the goalkeepers didn't want to play the game, which I could also understand, because as a striker, right, this is where I could have empathy, because I'd be thinking, hang on a minute, I want to shoot against the goalkeepers. They can't be knackered from diving around with the goalkeeper coach, So, but even Shea would, no problem. He'll take loads of pot shots. He'll go, right, come on in. Can you beat me? Whereas some keepers, even really, really good ones, wouldn't do that, because, and you think, well, so you had lads who were really throwing themselves into it, like in training and games and
saw the bigger picture. Yeah.
So, but they still would do the little, right, come on, can you beat me in training? And they weren't too big to go, no, I'm not gonna go and goal for you, or I'm not gonna be the cannon fodder for the strikers. But but we had class, loads of great lads.
Brilliant, David. We're gonna move on to the word association thing now, because we are rapidly running out of time, and you're a great talker. Time has flown by, so I'm gonna say a few things. I'm gonna say something, and then you just give me first word that comes to your mind as an answer. Okay? So we'll start now. Saipan.
Disaster.
Okay. Iker Casillas.
Lucky.
Excelsior.
Enjoyable.
Roy Keane.
Class.
London.
Miserable.
Burnham Grammar School.
Oh, happy.
Yeah, I was looking up that, David, and famous luminaries from that skill: yourself, Tracy Ullman, Jimmy Carr, Mike Ashley, and Ulrika Johnson.
Well, God knows how I got in there, because I had taken an exam and I was dreadful. I didn't do very well, but I got in there somehow.
Yes. Joe Biden.
Brilliant.
The coronation of King Charles.
Nah.
Meh. Oh, that'll do. Kite flying.
What?
Kite flying.
What?
That's our answer. That's okay. Hurling. Oh, he's gone. We've lost David there because somebody forgot to put money into the meter. There he is. He's back. Hurling.
Brilliant.
And Jersey Dudek.
safe.
Brilliant. David Connolly, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for giving us your time, and hopefully we get you on again and talk to you again soon.
Cheers, David.
Lads.
Brilliant.
Cheers,
David.
Take
All
care,
the best.
Al.
Cheers,
Bye,
Dave.
bye, bye.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
So, that's all we have for this week's House of Football with Sports Joe and William Hill. Thanks to my guests Alan Cawley and David Connolly. We'll be back again next week with another show with all things football. But for now, stay safe and we'll see you all again soon.
You've been listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe and William Hill.